Welcome to Politics Nation. I'm Al Sharpton. Tonight's lead, bold move. President Obama today broke the Republican gridlock in Congress and helped hundreds of thousands of young people in a major move. The president announced that this country will stop deporting young immigrants who were brought here illegally as children.
Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine you've done everything right your entire life. Studied hard, worked hard, maybe even graduated at the top of your class, only to suddenly face the threat of deportation to a country that you know nothing about, with a language that you may not even speak.
The president said this was just a temporary solution until lawmakers stop blocking immigration reform. Acting now, he said, is a question of compassion and of simply doing the right thing.
Effective immediately, the Department of Homeland Security is taking steps to lift the shadow of deportation from these young people. Over the next few months, eligible individuals who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be able to request temporary relief from deportation proceedings and apply for work authorization.
All across the country, people gathered around TV sets to watch the president make the announcement that would change so many lives. In fact, the policy will affect up to 800,000 young people currently living in the United States. It achieves some of the same goals as the DREAM Act that Republicans in Congress defeated in 2010, a bill that once had bipartisan support. Back in 2005, Senators John McCain and Ted Kennedy introduced similar legislation, a bill that was also supported by President Bush. But oh, how the Republican Party has changed. Today, Senator McCain called the president's announcement, quote, a politically motivated power grab. Senator Lindsey Graham said it was, quote, possibly illegal. And Arizona Governor Jan Brewer called it backdoor amnesty. Mitt Romney criticized the president's policy, but failed to say what he thinks about the actual issue.
This is an important matter, that we have to find a long-term solution, but that the president's action makes reaching a long-term solution more difficult.
Not much of a response. He's been a bit more direct, though, about it in the past.
I've indicated I would veto the DREAM Act if provisions included in that act say that people who are here illegally, if they go to school here long enough, get a degree here, that they can become permanent residents. I think that's a mistake.
Ultimately, though, today was not about politics. It was about people. The president knows this is an issue that affects real people who love America, who consider themselves Americans, and in some cases, who risk their lives for America. Joining me now is Arizona Congressman Raul Grijalva, co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, and Telemundo anchor Jose Diaz-Balart. Thank both of you for joining me tonight. Let me start with you, Congressman. Your reaction, first of all, to today's news.
Applaud the president. Courageous, historic, and very needed at this time to indicate to our nation as a whole that this issue that has been such a divisive issue that has been promoted through hate and division, that these young people are ours, they're our family, and the president's order gives them the opportunity that they've earned. I think it's historic. I'm very proud of this president. I respect his decision. He used political capital, and some say took a risk, but this was humanitarian, it was necessary, and it's good policy. And I'm not only appreciative, very, very proud of this president.
Let me ask you this before I go to Jose. You are in probably the toughest state in terms of some of the worst immigration policies from my perspective. I've marched out there with you and others. How will this affect people in your district, your constituency there in Arizona?
Well, it lifts this pale of uncertainty, a doubt. It's great for families. And for these young people, I'm so tired year after year telling them maybe next year. I'm glad the president stepped in. There has been nothing but obstruction on the part of the Republican leadership in the House and in the Senate. And now, through the president's direct action for Arizona, young people that qualify, an opportunity and relief to them and their families. It's a good day for them. And it's a good day because it's a precedent that we shouldn't run away from immigration reform. We should do something about it.
Now, Jose, the policy is 30-year-old or younger, arrived in the United States before age 16, lived in the U.S. for 5 years, no criminal record, high school diploma, in school, or served in the military. Those are those that are eligible for this. How widespread do you think this is? How important is this to a lot of the immigrant communities around the country?
Reverend, this is huge. This is huge. And you talked about 800,000 when you started the program. That's what officials, both in the White House and NGOs, believe would be the number of young people that could be benefiting from this program in the short term. But the Pew Hispanic Center, for example, said today that it could be as high as 1.4 million people that could be benefited from it. I want to also, if I could, Reverend, kind of separate the apples from the oranges on this issue. This is not like the DREAM Act, in that the DREAM Act, which both some Republicans and Democrats supported and some Democrats opposed in the Senate when it went down in flames in the year 2010, that proposal would have given these people, these hundreds of thousands of kids who know no other country but the United States of America, who were going to be deported to countries they've maybe never even been in and speaking a language they don't even possibly know, that would give them a path to citizenship. That the DREAM Act would have given them. This, under no circumstances, and the president was very clear in his speech today, this is no way going to give these people anything but a temporary reprieve from a separation of families that has, in the past 3 years, included almost 1.5 million people in this country. It's a 2-year pause and possibly, hopefully for these people, an extension of that 2-year pause. But down the road, what's needed is congressional action for immigration reform if there is to be some road to citizenship.
No, and I think that you raising that point is very important, because I don't know that people understand. One, he's not talking citizenship here, but we are talking about people born and raised in this country or brought to this country very young that know no other country, don't even know the language, that could be deported and dropped in the middle of somewhere that they are totally unfamiliar with, can't even speak the language, and they're told you're illegal, you must go there. This just stops their deportation. It does not give them citizenship.
Correct.
Absolutely, and our friend Congressman Grijalva can tell you that he represents a state, Arizona, that has been the center of the discussion for years now, not only because of SB 1070, which the Supreme Court is probably going to decide maybe this Monday or next Monday, the constitutionality of the SB 1070, but, you know, Arizona has been ground zero for immigration discussions. And the fact is that the SB 1070s of the world in the United States exist because of inaction both by the executive and the legislative powers in Washington for far too many years.
And we heard that action today. Now, Congressman, let me say this. Right away, of course, the right wing came back attacking. Rush Limbaugh and Fox News came out swinging on the president's policy. Watch this and give me your response, Congressman.
This is the president who's in re-election mode. Insert group or whatever here. This president is playing everything he needs, and that's political.
It's panic city for the left, and that's why Obama is out right now announcing amnesty for young illegals. Catch, release, vote.
I would imagine that people would be making a big run for the border.
Congressman, how do you respond to those criticisms?
Well, it's the same criticisms. You know, this machine, the extremists on the Republican side and their mouthpieces in the media have beat on immigrants for 2 election cycles. They beat on these kids for 2 election cycles and made them the cannon fodder for their rhetoric and for the hate and the fear that they've spread in this nation. Now, the president takes a courageous act. They say it's politics. I found it ironic that Governor Brewer and Senator McCain are calling it politics, when they will fight tooth and nail to prevent something like the DREAM Act from happening legislatively. The hypocrisy is on the other end. What the president had to do was necessary. He's waited for this process to work. As long as we have leadership that see immigration, see immigrants as political cannon fodder to be used in an election as opposed to fixing this broken immigration system, there is nothing else the president could do, and that's why I'm proud of him, because he had to take this action.
Jose, let me ask you this quickly. They mentioned politics. When you look at the politics of it, the Latino vote in the 2012 election, the polls now have President Obama at 61%, Mitt Romney at 27%. Yet the other day, Romney says, we're going to get by this immigration thing. We're going to win the Latino vote. How does the day affect that? What is the politics of today?
I think he took the ground right from under many in the Republican Party that had been taking baby steps to try and see if they could mitigate the wave of support by, generally speaking, the Hispanic community at large. You mentioned, Reverend, that NBC Wall Street Journal Telemundo poll, which showed an overwhelming support for the president by most Latino voters. And may I add the word voters, because these kids that are here that weren't born here could not vote. Right. Under the president's requirement today, they cannot vote. There is no path to citizenship. Let's not confuse magnesia from mercury. They're 2 different things. This is giving a stay of deportation for these kids that know no other country but the United States. And an interesting aspect we need to talk about. If you haven't been caught by immigration in this country and you're illegal, you're quiet. Now, 60 days from now, you will be able to come out from the shadows if you qualify and say, I am a dreamer and I can stay. That's a big thing that happens
That's
today.
huge. I think that's huge. I've got to go, though. But Jose, Congressman, thank you very much for your time. I've got to go to another guest.
I appreciate it.
And Jose, I don't know where you ever thought the right wing could be confusing, but we'll talk about that next time. Joining me now is Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jose Antonio Vargas. Last year, he revealed he was undocumented in an emotional article in the New York Times. And he just wrote the cover story for the brand new issue of Time magazine. He's also the founder of Define American, a movement to bring a voice to undocumented immigrants living in America. Jose, what's your reaction to the president's huge decision today?
This is, I'm in Washington, D.C. This is a great, joyous day for many of undocumented young people in this country, and not only for us, but for the people who support us. You know, our teachers, our pastors, kind of, you know, I've been referring to it as kind of our kind of underground railroad. This is a big day for us. I mean, as you know, every year, 65,000 undocumented people graduate from high school. You know, I did that. I graduated from high school in 2000. And when you're undocumented, you can go, you know, it's hard to get to college because there's no financial aid. But once you do go to college, then what do you do when you have a degree? Like, you know, you were just talking about the Time magazine cover, right? We have people there with biology degrees, engineering degrees, want to be doctors and lawyers. Instead, they're waiting on tables, right? They can't fully live their lives. Now they can. And to me, what's interesting about the policy today is how many times can you say that you have a government policy that actually creates tax revenues, right? So now we have new taxpayers. Don't we need that right now in this economy?
But Jose, help me get a sense to our viewers of people were crying today as they were watching that. Like there was this tremendous load lifted off of them. Like they were living in some kind of grip of fear that was relieved. Explain what people were going through.
Well, it's interesting that this question is coming from you. You know, you were there for the civil rights movement. For my generation, this is a civil rights movement. And we've all been in this together. I mean, I remember coming out, last year in the New York Times article, and literally had people on Facebook, on Twitter, just calling me, hey, brother, like we're in this together, right? There's such a sense of community and a sense of fraternity and sisterhood for the women in the community. And I think everybody felt just genuinely happy for each other. And I think you saw that kind of emotion today. I mean, for me at least, it was almost overwhelming just to be around people like Gabby Pacheco, who's been fighting for this since she was in high school. It's an incredible day. I mean, for me, and I'm a writer, there aren't even really words to describe it.
Wow.